Sigurd the Mighty. Killed by the severed head of a man he had just beheaded, he won a decisive battle, personally beheaded his defeated rival, and tied the severed head to his saddle as a trophy for the ride home. Somewhere along that ride, the dead man's tooth scraped against his leg. The wound became infected. Within days, one of the most successful Viking warlords in the Northern Isles was dead, killed by a man he had already killed himself. Sigurd Eysteinn, known to history as Sigurd the Mighty, ruled as the second Norse earl of Orkney during the late 9th century, a period when Norse expansion throughout the Northern Isles of Scotland and the broader surrounding region remained genuinely actively contested through ongoing military conflict between competing Norse and native Pictish and Scottish forces, a broader political and military context that had established Orkney itself as a significant, strategically important Norse territorial holding in the region. Sigurd, according to the specific historical account preserved primarily through the Orkneyinga Saga, a considerably later medieval Icelandic historical narrative documenting the Earls of Orkney's broader history, engaged in a formal, agreed-upon single combat encounter against a rival regional figure, mael, brigte, a Scottish or Pictish leader whose specific title and exact identity remain genuinely somewhat uncertain, given the saga's own considerable temporal distance from the actual events it describes. A combat arrangement the saga indicates was formally agreed upon by both parties as a specific method of resolving their ongoing territorial dispute, without requiring broader, more costly military conflict between their respective forces. The saga's account describes Sigurd achieving decisive victory in this formal combat encounter, defeating and beheading mael brigte, before, in a detail the saga specifically emphasizes as directly, causally connected to Sigurd's own subsequent death, attaching his defeated opponent's severed head to his own horse's saddle as a formal victory trophy, a documented practice among various historical warrior cultures specifically intended to publicly display and commemorate combat victory before beginning his return journey. What the saga specifically identifies as the direct, immediate cause of Sigurd's own subsequent death involves a genuinely, darkly ironic detail. Since mael brigte, according to the specific account, had been known for possessing unusually prominent front teeth, and as the severed head bounced and shifted against Sigurd's leg during his horseback journey home, one of these prominent teeth scraped and cut into Sigurd's own skin. A seemingly minor, incidental injury that, given the era's genuinely limited medical understanding and treatment capability regarding infection and wound care, subsequently developed into a severe, ultimately fatal infection. Sigurd's condition, according to the saga's account, deteriorated steadily over the following days as the initially minor wound became increasingly severely infected, a progression the era's available medical treatment proved genuinely incapable of successfully addressing or reversing, ultimately resulting in Sigurd's death from this specific infection, meaning the same defeated opponent Sigurd had personally killed and beheaded in decisive formal combat victory had, through this genuinely unusual delayed mechanism, ultimately caused Sigurd's own death shortly afterward. What makes this specific historical account genuinely particularly notable among documented unusual historical deaths is the specific direct causal chain the saga describes, connecting Sigurd's own decisive combat victory directly to his subsequent death through a mechanism that required no continued action or intent from his already deceased opponent. A genuinely unusual demonstration of exactly how a seemingly triumphant decisive victory could still ultimately prove fatal to the actual victor through circumstances entirely disconnected from the original combat's actual outcome or result. Historians and saga scholars studying this specific account generally note the genuine, important methodological caveat that the Orkneyinga Saga itself was composed considerably later than the actual events it describes, meaning the specific narrative details, while broadly consistent with the saga's own established historical framework regarding Sigurd's actual documented rule and approximate death date, may have been subject to the kind of narrative embellishment and dramatic emphasis common to medieval saga literature more broadly, a literary tradition that frequently emphasized dramatic irony and symbolically meaningful narrative details in ways that don't necessarily require complete literal historical accuracy to serve their broader intended narrative and cultural purpose within the saga tradition. Despite this genuine, important scholarly caveat regarding the account's precise historical reliability, Sigurd's specific, well-documented position within the broader historical record of Orkney's early Norse earls, combined with the account's consistent, sustained presence across the saga's various narrative retellings, has meant this specific account of his death has remained a genuinely persistent, frequently cited example within broader popular and historical discussion of unusual historical deaths, regardless of the specific, ultimately unresolvable scholarly uncertainty regarding its precise literal accuracy. What makes Sigurd the Mighty's death endure as one of history's most genuinely unusual documented accounts of an unlikely fatal circumstance isn't simply the darkly ironic specific mechanism the saga describes, striking as that irony genuinely remains regardless of its precise historical reliability, but the broader, genuinely instructive demonstration the account provides regarding exactly how thoroughly medieval society's genuinely limited medical understanding of infection could transform even the most seemingly minor, incidental injury into a genuinely fatal outcome, a broader historical reality. The specific, memorably ironic details of Sigurd's own particular case have helped ensure remained genuinely memorably documented within the broader historical record centuries after his actual death. If stories like this, where a decisive victory somehow still managed to kill the actual victor days later, are exactly what you come here for, subscribe to the grave details, because history holds more stories like this than most people will ever know.